Coming up in Center Circle, there's a new man at the helm. Mike Henry is now the chairman of the PLCA. Confusion over the new handball rule. And Dunbeholden could soon be playing at home. From an 89-year-old leader to an 85-year-old successor, Mike Henry is the new man at the helm of the Premier League Clubs Association, PLCA.
You're raising a challenging point in my life, you know. I'm healthy, okay? You could say that Mr. Siaga was treating it as retirement but still being with the people, right? If indeed as age I see it rearing its head so much, right? I have often said in anything that I do, right? The people ultimately decide that, right? What I'm trying to do right now is I have 2 or 3 years to set the thing on a course, some of which I have preached. If I put in the seat, then I'm going to try and do that for the club I represent and have to be responsible for, and then move it to the next stage for anyone else. From that point of view, I leave that really to anyone to judge. Is my ideas outdated? Are they old-fashioned? Do they carry with it any form of appeal, right? Am I disconnected from the young person playing soccer or not? The first line of business is to continue a lot of the work that Mr. Siaga and others on the PLCA had done by finding their own funding and building the strength of the Premier League, which is the only successful structure as we know it right now, and which is the branded element that should be boosted by all of us in the soccer world. Hopefully at the table we resolve the matters rather than taking 2 sides or 1 side, because what we establish is that this is all in the interest of the professional need of the game and the professional need to apply ourselves to build it up, that we build the integrity of the league and continue to expand on that integrity which Mr. Siaga and others have left behind, and build equally on that for the clubs themselves to recognize their responsibility in that context.
But despite Siaga and Henry being from the same era, Henry says there'll be no mixing of politics and football.
Let me put it on rest totally. I never ever run my life on the basis of when you walk through that door, are you for me or against me? I make the spirit, that's how just the Rastafari work anyway, you know. It must be the spirit that what make you move in it. I have to come from here, so you know, I come from here, so can't come from anywhere else, right? Okay? And if I prejudge you, then I'm doing exactly what God said we shouldn't do. Judge not that ye may not be judged. So I'm not into that overall. My concern as a PLCA chairman must be the welfare of the clubs, and by immediate extension the welfare of the players, and by immediate extension the accommodation to the public in relation to participate, and do it with an open book, that we don't have issues that can create. The Premier League has been able to finance itself, and I emphasize that, okay? And therefore it seeks sponsorship and the expansion of that sponsorship, which I'm seeking to open up right now as a new chairman.
Over the years, some members of the PLCA have asked for transparency, especially when it comes to sponsorship. Henry says everything will be put on the table, and the clubs must do likewise.
Very much so, and it's hopefully also some of the clubs will garner unto themselves larger shares than the smaller emerging clubs, will also share their knowledge and be able to allow that opening to the other clubs. That's the role that I have to play. And that's the role that I have experienced having just come up 10 years ago. Okay? Just as it is now that some of the major sponsors we were talking to, some clubs are talking to. Now at the table we must decide that, and we must disclose that. Okay? And just as it that many of us in the new emerging structure don't know much about transfers and value of players and which scout is coming and which thing is there. So we must help those clubs to expose them, right? By the game and by the marketing.
And Henry will be using his position in the political lower house to make a case for the clubs to be given land lease of 99 years.
The next stage for me is to engage the government, right? In that area I talked about of maintenance of field, right? Upkeep of field, right? And the ownership of the land you play on, okay? It could become a policy that you make that land available, right, for a Premier League club in each parish, right? And you make the start work by the value of the land or whatever. That takes thinking and implementation. But if you don't have a ground to play on, and then the rule says I must have seating for 1,500 people, right? And I don't want to name any club because we're working all together. But one, I will name one. Look at Boys Town struggling. Huh? Right? When next door you have two other clubs. Don't we see that if we allow that to go, will not really improve the wider element that we need to be included on? Whose land does Tivoli play on? Whose land does Arnett play on? Whose land does Waterhouse play on? Whose land does Humblion play on? I know I play on a community land. And I've asked the National Land Agency to give me a valuation, and I'm writing the government for a 99-year lease. That will go on my balance sheet. That hope will be respected now when we call on the financial structure to recognize that sports is not entertainment, it is a business. And it's structured like any business. When I have a contract with a player, I have a contract with a player. If we restrict players to only 2-year contract, you can borrow money from a bank for a car for 2 years.
Henry also called on the financial institutions to step up to the plate and support football.
Because if indeed, as Humblion, I've given you 40 new accounts, right? At whatever it is, that 2 or 3 million it costs me every month, has to circulate through the system. And every customer I give you brings something to your table. It first gives the young man a dignity of account, a recognition at the bank, right? And opens him up to you with your credit card, right? And your other facilities. So let's bring the persons into the table for a way that life needs to be run now.
And with no teams from the western end of the country in the Premier League this season, Henry says it's a major blow for the nation's football.
At the moment, the economic structure of the country is run in north and south, right? So the Montego Bay growth, which you call in western area, all of this is related to tourism and the development of the industries around. So it is important, okay, that we look on it. But then some of that comes through business leagues, right? It's how you then tie that in the structured development of the game, which needs a far wider reach and a far more awareness of what we need to achieve. I assume that might have been what was pushing the argument about franchising. But then franchising itself can create the other imbalance problems. And in terms of soccer, I think the English Premier League is the right one to follow.
And there'll be no easing up on the JFF for the yearly $50,000 grant handed over to them from FIFA for the nation's top league. Money the PLCA says can be used to pay the referees.
Should we be the ones that are paying referees when we could look at influencing it, or should that be the responsibility of the JFF? And yes, it is that we have paid over $5.5 million that we could claim back, right, at the moment, right? Because what you now come to is the technicalities and the integrity of the position. What do I mean by that? If the PLCA is ending up paying the referees, you can influence them. So shouldn't, for the whole transparency and etc., for you to ask another body to do that? And I think that's what FIFA inclines, and I think that's how the English Premier League is. But you can't do that if in the end you're talking about seeking the same sponsors or what have you, and not accountable for everything that you do. My position as chairman was that I am not going around like a mendicant begging for recognition. Okay? The structure of football will speak to what is the integrity. And in my line, it should be, right, those under the supervision of FIFA, right, the JFF, that should be responsible for those fees. I think that removes the integrity position from the actual owners of the league. Okay? If that's not accepted in terms of it, and I assure the referees that if we have to find it, should it still be owed, we will find it. Let's not have others nibble at the cheese, right? Let us make it available that we can fairly share it wherever it is necessary to be shared in the integrity of how you run your club.
Henry's transition into football is not by accident, as he played Manning Cup for Beckford and Smith, now St. Jago High School. He also coached at the prep school level where he won 9 consecutive Alberga Cup titles.
Yes, against the likes of Chung Foy, David Lyons, others that were there. But it's been a love of my life. You must remember I wrote a book called Reggae Road to Soccer Glory, right? Because being at my age, I don't think there's more than 3 World Cups I've missed across the world. So it's been a passion and love of my life, right? And more importantly for me though, right, is to move that professionalism, right? To move that respect for where you can reach, right? And equally that the game is a structure. If you can be a good manager of a club, you can apply to be a manager of a club somewhere else. And good management of clubs is very urgently needed too, right? And therefore, yes, it's been a love of my life, a passion of my life, and it's still the glorious game for me, right?
Still to come on Centre Circle, Peter Prendergast clears the grey area on the new handball rule, and gore development to give Dunbeholden a sheen at home.